Not long after Lu Xianyang came to Mudping Alley, another rare guest came to the alley, Zhao Yao, a handsome reading scholar in blue shirt, quite a bit like the teacher Qi Jingchun. Zhao Yao is the eldest grandson of one of the 4 major surnames in the town, compared with Lu Zhengchen's idol playboys, Chao Yao, who was also born in wealth, has a good reputation. Many lonely old people in the town have received the favor of teenagers. The so-called celebrities raise their hopes in the wild, and the book seems to overestimate Zhao Yao's aspirations, and he is a little bit of a villain to help a gentleman. One year, without the slightest slack, even the old man who watched the young man grow up in Fulu Street would have to give his thumbs up. Every time he reprimanded his own children, he would always use Zhao Yao as a reason, which made Zhao Yao very few among his peers. Heart-to-heart friends. Lu Zhengchen's personality is free, and he doesn't like to deal with a nerd who is a nerd. Just imagine that everyone is so excited to climb the wall to peek at the pretty widow. But someone is saying, see no evil by the side. In short, the young Zhao Yao liked to deal with people outside Fulu Street these years. He walked almost all the alleys, big and small, except for Mud Bottle Alley, because Song Jixin lived in this alley, and one of them let Zhao Yao often feels ashamed of her peers. But if I really want to talk about a friend, Zhao Yao probably only recognizes Song Jixin as a chess friend. Although he has been losing to Song Jixin in chess for so many years, he is determined to win or lose, and his obsession with winning chess belongs to his obsession for the talented Song Jixin. Zhao Yao has always admired him in his heart, but Zhao Yao was a little disappointed, because his intuition told him that although Song Jixin was laughing with himself and usually had a close relationship, he never seemed to see him, be a true friend and confidant. Although Zhao Yao had never visited Song Jixin's house before, when he saw a certain house, he knew that this house must be Song Jixin's house. It looks like Song Jixin's word. The reason is very simple. It is because the style has changed too much. It can almost be said that the words are different. The word yuan, next to the word water, has a particularly deep and long meaning. The word odd, that big mention, the spirit is great. The thunder is overwhelming. The word country is written in a neutral and peaceful manner, like a sage sitting upright, without the slightest flaw. Standing at the door of the courtyard, Zhao Yao almost forgot to knock. Leaning forward, staring at the words, lost in thought, feeling that he was about to lose the courage to knock on the door. It is precisely because of his diligent practice of calligraphy and numerous posts that he is more aware of the power, weight, and spirit of those words. Zhao Yao was saddened, took out a money bag, bent over and placed it at the door, ready to leave without saying goodbye. At this time, the courtyard door suddenly opened. Zhao Yao looked up. Song Jixin seemed to be about to go out with his maid Jiggy, and the two laughed and smiled. Song Jixin pretended to be surprised and joked, Zhao Yao, what are you doing for this great gift? Zhao Yao picked up the money bag in embarrassment, and was about to explain the reason, when Song Jixin took the embroidered bag away and said with a smile, Yo, Zhao Yao is here to give a gift. Accept it and accept it. But I said in advance, I am a poor family, but I don't have any gifts that will make Brother Zhao conspicuous. So if you come and don't go, it will be indecent. Zhao Yao smiled bitterly and said, this bag is worth more than money, so it should be regarded as my parting gift. No need to return gifts. Song Jixin turned his head and smiled knowingly at his maid, and handed her the money bag. Look, I'll say that Zhao Yu is the most polite scholar in the town. How about that? After the girl took the money bag, she held it on her chest. She narrowed her eyes with a smile. She was very happy, and she turned slightly to give a blessing. Thank you, Mr. Zhao. My young master said that there is Yu King in the family of good deeds, and there are blessing fields for those who do good deeds. The slave maid here wishes Zhao Gongzi Qingyun to go straight, and the journey is thousands of miles. Zhao Yao hurriedly bowed back and said, Thank you, Miss Jigui, for her auspicious words. Song Jixin touched the back of his head and yawned. Aren't you tired? Jiggy said with a smile. If you can get a bag of money every time, the slaves and servants will not get tired of giving 10,000 blessings. Zhao Yao said with some shame. I'm going to disappoint Miss Jiggy. Song Jixin waved his hand. Let's go. Have a drink? Zhao Yao looked embarrassed. Song Ji excitedly said, a piece of shit. You can only read rigid rules when you read, and you can't read the romantic style of celebrities. How can you do it? Zhao Yao asked tentatively. Have a drink. Song Jixin rolled his eyes and said, Get drunk? Just as Zhao Yao was about to speak, Song Jixin grabbed his neck and dragged him away. When the maid Jigui locked the door, the four-legged snake tried to sneak out, but she kicked it back to the yard. When she passed by the house next door, she quietly stood on tiptoe, glanced sideways, and saw Lu Xianyang's tall figure. The latter also found her and immediately smiled brightly. Lu Xianyang was about to say hello to her, but she had withdrawn her eyes. Walk away quickly. There is a restaurant in the town, but it is really not big. But the cost is not small. But Zhao Yao is a child of the Zhao family after all, and he has a good reputation. He patted his chest and said that he would not charge a penny, so that the two scholars could come to the small shop to admire their faces and drink. It was his restaurant that was flourishing, and it was only right for the two young masters to charge him. Song Jixin immediately smiled and stretched out his hand, and asked for money on the spot. The shopkeeper angrily found himself to go down the steps, saying that he owed him, and that he would send some jars of good wine to Song Gongzi tomorrow. At that time, Zhao Yao wanted to dig a hole in the ground and dig in. The shopkeeper had always been aware of the eccentric temperament of young Master Song of Nipingxiang, but he was not really angry. He personally found a quiet window seat for the three of them on the second floor. Song Jixin didn't talk much with Zhao Yao, and Song Jixin didn't persuade people to drink alcohol, which made Zhao Yao, who originally regarded death as home, very strange. Looking from the window on the second floor of the restaurant, I can just see a plaque on the 12-legged archway, and I do my part. Song Jixin asked, Mr. He really doesn't leave the town with you. Zhao Yao nodded and said, Mr. temporarily changed the schedule, saying that he would stay in the school and teach the penultimate chapter. Knowing the rights, Song Jixin said with emotion. Then Mr. He is going to tell a big truth, to teach the world for the Confucian sage, and tell us that in the beginning, there was no law in the world, and the sage used propriety to transform all living beings. And the monarchs at that time all advocated etiquette. If you think that if you go out of the way, you will be punished, so there is a law. Zhao Yao was already slightly drunk, and his speech was vague, and asked, Do you think it's right? Why didn't you just teach the last article? Kaylee. Song Jixin answered the question. Before walking out of the town, you were like a mandrill, a ghost, a fairy, and you believed it. But if you didn't believe it, you didn't. As for how Mr. He taught and how the students listened, let's have our destiny. The maid, Jigui, also drank a glass of wine. She looked dizzy and playful, and did not look at the towering archway from beginning to end. In the 12-legged archway, the bases of the stone pillars are 9 different beasts of the 9 sons of Longsheng, besides the white tiger. Huanwu and Suzaku, the people of the small town have lived here for generations. No wonder. Zhao Yao couldn't help hiccups, stood up staggeringly, and said, Farewell to you. I hope to see you again. Song Jixin thought for a while, then got up and said with a smile, I will definitely see you again. Zhao Yao. Mocho has no confidants ahead. Zhao Yao, with dazzling eyes, bit his tongue and said sincerely, Song Jixin, you should leave the town as soon as possible. No one in the world knows you. You can definitely do it. Song Jixin obviously didn't take it seriously. He waved his hand and said, Let's go. Let's go. Drunken talk. Insulting gentleness. After Zhao Yao and Song Jixin left the restaurant, they parted ways. Before Zhao Yao left, he was probably a coward and asked Song Jixin, Do you want to go to the official residence of the kiln supervisor and make a look? I can convince the concierge. Song Jixin popped out a word from between his teeth with a cold face. Get out. Zhao Yao left sadly. The maid Jigui looked at the back and said in a low voice, Young master, they are also kind. Song Jixin sneered and said, The good intentions of the good people in the world will end up doing bad things and have bad consequences. Is it less? She thought about it, and it seemed that it was such a boring truth. So she stopped insisting. The Fulu Street, where Zhao Yao lives, is in the north of the town, and the Mudping Alley is in the west of the poor households. The girl whose real name is Wang Ju is smiling. After Zhao Yao returned to his ancestral house on Fulu Street, the servant told him that his ancestor was waiting for him in the study, and he had to pass immediately, and he could not stop for a moment. In the small town, the Zhao family does not show off the mountains and waters, and they are rich and introverted. They are not like the Lu family. The old woman with a cane was standing beside a desk, stroking the table. Her vicissitudes of life was full of sad memories. After the old woman smelled the strong alcohol smell of her eldest grandson outside the door, she was not angry. She waved with a smile. Yaoir, come in. What are you doing with the pestle at the door? What is it for a man to drink a little wine? It's not drinking horse urine. It's not a shame. Zhao Yao crossed the threshold with a wry smile and bowed to his ancestors respectfully. The old woman said impatiently, It's not good to read too much. It's just a matter of rules, so that scholars spend their whole lives beating the wall with ghosts, and they are very tired and crooked. Just say your grandfather. You are top-notch in everything. The only thing you can do is talk to me about the big truths. It's really annoying, especially the way of doing things. Especially the lack of play. I can't say anything about him. Smashed it with a cane. The old woman was suddenly amused by herself and laughed. I almost forgot. I didn't need a cane at that time. She smiled and asked, Why? Are you drinking with the little white-eyed wolf surnamed Song? Zhao Yao said helplessly. Grandma. How many times have I told you? Song Jixin is very talented, very savvy, and can learn everything quickly. The old woman sneered. Smart is the smartest, but your grandfather was 3 years old before he died, and he saw that little thing to death. Do you want to know what your grandfather said? Zhao Yao quickly replied. Grandson doesn't want to know. The old woman didn't care whether the precious grandson wanted to listen or not, and said to herself, Your grandfather said, You are young, the city is very heavy, but it is a pity that the person who loses the voice of his ancestors must be this person. Then she pointed to Zhao Yao. Your grandfather also said, Wen Liang, respectful and frugal. Nothing unusual at first, but he who cultivates the vitality of his descendants must be my grandson. After the old woman finished speaking, she smiled. Damn old man. He has been sour all his life. And finally he said something nice. Zhao Yao, who was a little confused, was about to speak when he heard his grandmother sigh and sigh. Old man. Old man. The young man had no choice but to take back his words, smiled, and took the old woman's arm. Grandma's birthday is younger than Nanshan. The old woman stretched out her dry palm and patted the back of the baby's grandson's hand. Better than your grandfather. I don't know how to tell nonsense when reading, and also say good things to others. The young man smiled and said, Grandpa is really knowledgeable. Mr. He also said that Grandpa has a good way of studying and interpreting the word ye, and he has a lot of experience. The old woman immediately showed her fox's tail, and she couldn't hide her smugness, but she pretended to snort coldly. That's not it. It doesn't matter who picked the man. Zhao Yao pursed his lips tightly, holding back his smile. The old woman took Zhao Yao to the chair behind the bookcase. The young man found that there was a wooden carving of a Wolong dragon on the bookcase, which was lifelike. But for some reason, after careful observation, he found that this blue wooden dragon had eyes but no beads. The old woman picked up a writing brush that was already dipped in ink, a brand new small cone pen made of old locust branches in a wooden tube, held it in both hands, and handed it to her eldest grandson tremblingly. Zhao Yu took the brush without knowing it, and his shoulders sank. It turned out that his grandmother put her hand on his shoulder, and he took advantage of the situation to sit in the seat that only the head of the Zhao family could sit. The old woman took a step back and said very solemnly, Zhao Yao, take your seat. Today, you will be the finishing touch for the ancestors of the Zhao family. A statue of a dilapidated clay statue on the grassy ground is slanted horizontally and vertically, and no one cares. This has been the case for thousands of years, and even mud statues will continue to fall here. The people of the small town not only take it easy on many things, but in fact, seeing these statues, they have long since lost much respect. The old man will occasionally nag a few words to tell his children not to come here to play, but the young children still like to come here to hide and seek, catch crickets, etc. It may wait until these children grow up and become old men. The old man who is old will also tell the children not to come here to play, generation after generation. Just like this, there is no wind or rain, no waves, and it is unremarkable. I saw here the rolled head, the broken torso, and the separated palm, as if they had been reluctantly put together, so that they could maintain their roughly original appearance, but that was all that was left. A young man in straw sandals hurried here from Mud Bottle Alley, with 3 offering money in his palms tightly. After finding a statue, he squatted down, looked around, and there was no one there, so he quietly put the copper coin into the crack of the statue. After getting up, I went to the second and third statues, all of which did the same. Before the young man left, he stood alone in the lush green grass, folded his hands together, lowered his head and said silently, Peace to pieces, peace to pieces. I hope you will bless my parents not to suffer in the next life. If possible, please tell me my parents. I'm doing fine now. Don't worry. At dusk, when Chen Ping'an returned to the town and passed by the east gate of the city, the sloppy man at the gate was still humming a tune and saying, An inch of time is not to be taken lightly. All glory and wealth can be thrown away. Disturbed by the hurried footsteps, the man opened his eyes and happened to meet the young man who was just starting out. When the man saw this debt collector, he was very disappointed and waved angrily. Go! Go! Your time is worth a bird's money. There are 4 words for prosperity: wealth and honor. If you can relate to one of them, burn a high incense. After Chen Ping'an ran past, he raised a palm high, spread his fingers, and shook it vigorously. It was obviously to remind the janitor that there was an incense love of 5 cents between the two of them. The man spat fiercely and scolded. It's not a good bird either. The young man disappeared quickly, and the man looked up at the clear blue sky. Like a layer of beautiful glaze, the man rubbed his chin full of stubble and said, Mr. He said a poem. What is it? A good thing. Liuli. An ox cart slowly drove out of the town. In the car sat a well-known reading man in blue shirt. The driver was a middle-aged man with a dull look. The man immediately waved his hand and said with a loud laugh, Brother Yao, don't go in a hurry. Brother, I have something to say in my stomach. I only remember good things, colored glass, etc. I can't remember anything else. You boy is knowledgeable. Big, tell me. Zhao Yao, who was in high spirits, held a luggage in his arms and said loudly, The good things in the world are not firm, and the colorful clouds are easy to disperse, and the glaze is brittle. The man gave a thumbs up, as expected of Brother Yao. He is very knowledgeable and promising in the future. Don't forget to go back to your hometown to see my brother. If you can't tell, you can replace your husband and be a teacher for our small town children. Good. Xiao Yao was stunned for a moment, then clasped his fists and smiled. Brother Cheng Jian. As soon as the man was happy, he took out an embroidered bag from his sleeve, flicked his wrist, and threw it to the reading man in the blue shirt. I never feel troublesome. My brother is never right to see people. I will send you some gadgets, and the journey will be smooth. Zhao Yao quickly grabbed the purse. There will be a period later. The man nodded with a smile, waved his hand at the boy's bullock cart, but murmured, It's hard. The boy with straw sandals walked towards the depths of the town, while Zhao Yao's ox cart went to the world outside the town. Passing each other, the man sitting on the tree stump counted with his fingers. The big Sui boy with the golden carp in the bamboo basket, the widow goose cub in Nipping Lane, and Brother Yao in Fulu Street. This is already 3. La! But there are so many people coming in next, and they have to pick up junk. Or, I will also take the opportunity to find a filial apprentice who can rub shoulders and knock backs. The man stretched out his hand and scratched his wrinkled dark cheeks. Hehe smiled and said, If it is a beautiful female apprentice who is bright and smooth, it will be the best. Well, I can endure a poor face, but my legs must be long. The well-known bachelor in the small town put his hands on the back of his head, looked up at the sky, and laughed secretly. After thinking of these happy things, all of a sudden there is no worry. And I only feel that there is great beauty between heaven and earth. Before Chen Ping'an left Mupin Alley, he made an appointment with Liu Shangyang and the black-clothed girl to meet directly at Liu Shangyang's house. When Liu Shangyang arrived, he was cleaning and wiping the ancestral armor with a clean cotton towel. The girl in black, Miss Ning, put on her light-veiled hat again. She wore a knife at her waist, and she casually held the long sword with a snow-white scabbard in her hand. For some reason, Chen Ping always felt that Miss Ning seemed to dislike this sword. On the table, the old thing at the bottom of the press box passed down by the Liu family from generation to generation was said to be a precious armor. In Chen Ping's eyes, it was really ugly and frightening. The scratches slanted down from the left shoulder all the way to the right waist. Regarding this point, the two teenagers were at a loss for words. They couldn't imagine what a huge beast in the mountains and forests had to be to create this terrifying scene. Later, the imperial court banned many peaks, and people were not allowed to enter the mountains to chop wood and burn charcoal. Chen Ping'an and Liu Shangyang almost never violated the prohibition. And a large part of the reason is here. Chen Ping'an is a little strange. This black charcoal iron armor is ugly and ugly, but Liu Shangyang really regards it as a family heirloom, even if it is a friendship like Chen Ping'an. He has only seen it once over the years, less than half of it. The stick of incense was carefully moved back to the vermilion lacquer box and enshrined. However, seeing Liu Shangyang peeking at the girl in black from time to time, Chen Ping'an was a little relieved. Liu Shangyang has always been such a virtuous person, and he can't control his eyes when he sees a beautiful woman. But he doesn't really like to be moved. He just likes to show off. For example, in the past summer, when I was bathing shirtless in the brook on the other side of the covered bridge, if a girl of the same age passed by with a seedling or a yellow ox, Liu Shangyang would definitely come to the bank first, burning his buttocks first, on the big blue stone next to it, and then coughed loudly. Song Jiksen commented on this as announcing the world, and finally slammed it again. Chen Ping'an, who has very good eyesight, can actually see the eyes and expressions of girls in the distance, clearly. So he has always wanted to tell Liu Shangyang the truth. Some of those good-looking sisters rolled their eyes. Some cursed, and more of them were fundamental, turn a blind eye. The only thing is that there is no one with bright eyes who thinks you are a hero. Of course, later Liu Shangyang fell in love with Song Jiksen's maid, Jigui, and fell into it inexplicably. After that, the tall boy seemed to have no other beautiful women in his eyes. Even if he is ostentatious with the black-clothed girl at this moment, he is more of an arrogant and indifferent girl. Don't underestimate him. Don't think that with a knife and a sword you can drag the king and Laozi, this family heirloom of my Liu Shangyang, that is also the only one in the town. The girl in the veiled hat waited until Chen Ping'an was behind, and looked around. 4 weeks around, she finally put the longsword horizontally on an old antique cabinet painted with gold-plated flowers. The paint was mottled and cracked. The pattern is a golden osmanthus tree. When the full moon is in the sky, the girl turned her head and said, "The sword is here. Don't touch it, or you will be at your own risk." I'm not joking. Liu Shangyang was busy wiping the treasure armor. He lowered his head and sighed from time to time, and rubbed his arm lightly. He was really enjoying it. Chen Ping'an promised, "Definitely." The girl said to Liu Shangyang, "This cabinet is worthless, but this inlaid pattern of gold osmanthus hanging on the moon, don't sell it easily." Liu Shangyang said without raising his head, "I didn't like that thing when I was a child." "If you like it, girl, just scrape it off yourself." Of course, the girl in black did this act of burning the piano and cooking the crane. She just asked curiously, "What is the material of this pattern?" Liu Shangyang glanced back. "It's hundreds of years old. I don't know. Even my grandfather can't say 1, 2, 3, or 4, Chen Ping'an said softly. "It should be a stone picked up from a small stream beach. There are many colors, but Liu Xianyang's elders must have only selected golden yellow ones. Crushed them first, and then glued them together. The kind of stone is called snake gallstone." The girl in black asked, "Stones, how many are there in the stream?" Chen Ping smiled and said, "Miss Ning, if you want, I can pick up a big basket for you a day. No one here likes to see this, but Gutan likes it, and often picks it up by herself." The girl in black sighed. He took a deep breath, looked deeply at the poor boy in Neping Lane. "You poor man who lives on the mountain of gold and silver." Chen Ping'an was surprised. This kind of stone is outside. "Is it valuable?" She lifted the curtain and said, "The price depends on who is in the hands. Besides, even if it falls into the hands of someone who knows how to do it, it depends on luck. If you are lucky, one is enough. With bad luck, the stones piled up into a mountain will not be a problem. But no matter what, it is valuable, and it is very valuable. I just don't know if I can bring it out of the town, which is very important." Liu Xianyang put in a sentence, "This stone is a little weird. As long as the stream is taken out, once the wind blows and the sun is exposed to the sun, the color will fade, especially after rain and snow. The color will fade even more. Other than that, it's nothing." The girl regretted. "It really is." Chen Ping'an hesitated for a moment. "How about I go pick up a big basket and come back tomorrow and try it? What if there are exceptions?" The girl shook her head and said, "For me, it doesn't make sense." Liu Xianyang had already moved the treasured armor back into the house and hid it. At this time, he leaned against the door and said with a smile, Chen Pingan is a big money fan. Maybe tonight he will go to the stream to find stones. The girl said, "Let's go." When she walked to the door, she turned her head and asked, "I will keep the hairpin and the prescription for you, but tomorrow, I still need you to go to Mud Bottle Alley to help you boil the medicine." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "No problem." She thought for a while. Her face was solemn, and she reminded, "The most powerful group of foreigners who entered the town around the same time as me should be the old man from Zhengyang Mountain. This trip was to escort the little girl. It's the big Sui eunuch who injured me, and then Liu Jimao who took Guchan away. Don't underestimate the woman who hides the knife in her smile. So as long as you meet the old guy from Zhengyang Mountain, try not to argue. But once you get up, if there is a conflict, just delay time. Don't do anything with others. Don't have any luck, and be sure to delay it until I appear," Liu Xianyang said in a low voice. "On our territory, these out-of-towners who are not familiar with each other really dare to kill people." Chen Pingan glanced at him, nodded and said, "Dare." Liu Xianyang swallowed. Chen Pingan asked suddenly, "Remember Lu Daocheng, the fortune teller who set up the stall? How did he tell you?" Liu Xianyang's head was heavy for a while, and after trying to recall, he scratched his ears and said, "How can I remember this clearly? I only know that it was some unpleasant and unfavorable words. Anyway, it said that there was a big disaster, burning incense, etc. It's nonsense. Cheating people for money?" Chen Pingan turned to look at the girl in black. The girl said fiercely, "He can't remember the signature. How can I unsign him? I really think I'm a fairy." Chen Pingan was a little confused, wondering why Miss Ning was suddenly so annoyed. The girl strode out of the house, compared to the previous time. It was slow and leisurely, and it was much more resolute. The girl with the saber was walking in the spacious alley, wondering if she could go back and find a few books to nibble on. When the girl thought of walking around in the future, she simply cut off her head with the flying sword, and then added a few impassioned impromptu poems, even if there was no one around. She felt really handsome. Just as the girl was full of longing, a familiar figure flew past. "See you tomorrow, Miss Ning." When the voice fell, the figure was almost at the end of the alley. The youth in straw sandals, carrying a basket on his back, walks like a fly. The girl was dumbfounded and muttered to herself, "Is there really such a money fan?" The young man stepped on the shredded starlight all the way and went out of the town to the creek. Although it was night, Chen Pingan ran no slower than during the day. Chen Pingan deliberately avoided the position of the covered bridge with the deepest water level, where the stream was much higher than other places. Chen Pingan chose a stream whose water was barely above his knees. He took off the large bamboo basket behind him, bent over to take it. He picked up a small bamboo basket hidden in it, hung it tightly around his waist, took off his straw sandals, rolled up his trousers, and then went into the water to touch the stones. The wound on his left hand that was cut by the broken porcelain still hurts. Naturally, it cannot be soaked in water. The teenager can only use his right hand to dig through the creek to pick it up. In fact, the stones in the dry riverbed are the easiest to pick up. But as Liu Xianyang said, the color will fade badly. Now, Chen Pingan has a rough idea of the mystery from the black-clothed girl. Soil. Seemingly ordinary soil. In some places, even if it is separated by a mountain, when it reaches the mouth, it is a completely different taste. The old man Yao said that this is called the tree moving the dead and the living, and the mud moving the nest to become a Buddha. The mud in his hand will soon change its taste as long as it leaves the original land. The creek has no name. The stones in the creek are as big as a fist and as small as a thumb. They are colorful, but the people of this small town have been used to seeing them lying quietly in the clear water for generations. Naturally, no one thinks it is a rare thing. Whoever moves these stones into the house will definitely be regarded as a fool. Chen Pingan, who was stooping and wading in the water, kept moving and turning over the large stones at the bottom of the stream. He had already picked up 7 or 8 stones and put them in the bamboo basket. The golden oranges are also white and delicate like a baby's skin. And there is a ball of darkness. And the black is shiny. And there are bright red peach blossoms. And the color of the shrimp back is the most, and so on. Most of these stones, commonly known as snake gallstones in the village, are not large, and they are smooth and heavy to hold in the hand, if they are held high in the sun during the day, or illuminated by candlelight in the middle of the night. The texture of the stones are fully visible and vaguely like silk, like a tiny snakefish winding. Look at it from a distance. And the skin color is like sparkling fish scales and snake scales. About an hour later, the fish basket on Chen Ping's waist was almost full. He returned to the stream where the baskets of straw sandals were placed, and went to the shore to pull up a few large handfuls of reeds, wild celery and dog's tail grass, and put them on the bottom of the basket. Then I put the stones into the basket one by one, carried the straw sandals, tied the fish basket, carried the basket, and walked ashore. When I reached the bank of the stream where I turned back, I put down the straw sandal basket again, and went down the stream and continued to move, stone. After picking up half of the basket, Chen Pinggan straightened his waist and looked up at the starry sky, hoping to see meteors streaking across the sky, but apparently he didn't have such good luck tonight. After Chen Pinggan recovered, he continued to do what a financial fan should do with the vague starlight and extraordinary eyesight. Every time he successfully picked up a stone, Chen Pinggan felt a sense of joy. For the young man, every stone is like a hope. Before he knew it, Chen Pinggan had accumulated more than half a basket of stones, a total of about 80 stones, the largest of which was bigger than his fist, and the color was extremely eye-catching. like chicken blood condensed into a ball, and the color was bright and upright. Not at all. It gives an uncomfortable feeling that such a large stone has almost no flaws and cracks. At this time, Chen Ping'an was walking on the bank, walking towards the next stream, playing with a medium-sized snake gallstone in his hand. The light green color is much lighter than the plum green in the small town porcelain. The stone is round and smooth. Very cute. Ping'an immediately fell in love. Chen Ping'an walked to the huge bluestone cliff on the shore. Children in the small town often bathe in this stream in the hot summer. The water under the cliff is especially deep. The deepest pit is as high as 2 Chen Ping'an, which is the second deepest of this creek. In the deep pool under the covered bridge, young people with good water like to compete here the most, who can stay under the puddle for a long time. The reason why Chen Ping'an chose this deep pit was because when he and Liu Xianyang took a bath here before, they found that there were a lot of snake gallstones at the bottom of the pit. Liu Xianyang even deliberately floated up with a snake gallstone under his arm in order to show off his outstanding water quality. Chen Ping'an remembered that the stone was at least as big as Guchan's head. The stone was slightly white and transparent, and there were tiny bright red dots inside, like a frozen peach petal. Liu Xianyang felt that this move was quite meaningful at the time, so he asked Chen Ping'an to help him carry such a large stone home. As a result, when he arrived in the small town, the tall boy with no character felt bored, so he asked Chen Ping'an to solve the stone by himself. Ping'an had just walked into Mud Bottle Alley that time, when he found that the next door Zhigi was following behind him for no reason. He didn't speak. The meat bun was almost the same. Chen Ping'an couldn't bear her greed, so he gave her the stone. As a result, she couldn't move it at first, and almost smashed her foot. Chen Ping'an had to move to Song Jixin's yard. Go! As for the final whereabouts of the stone, Chen Ping'an is unknown. The stone is as white as water, and the peach blossoms float in it, just like the peach blossoms in Taoyi Lane after the rain. The color is full of green onions. Even before today, Chen Ping'an didn't know the mystery of this kind of stone at all, and he always felt that the big stone was really beautiful from the bottom of his heart. Chen Ping'an sighed and stopped suddenly. 30 paces away, on the azure stone cliff by the stream, sat a girl in azure clothes, with bulging cheeks, but she was still stuffing something into her mouth. The first impression in Chen Ping'an's mind was that the girl should have been reincarnated by a starving ghost, so she was so miserably hungry in the middle of the night. Chen Ping'an thought about it and stopped approaching, for fear of disturbing the girl's mood for supper. It's just that he didn't turn around and left. After all, he had already made up his mind. Tonight, he must go to the puddle to try his luck. Every time he touched a stone or two, he would go ashore. The snake gallstones in the pit are larger than the rest of the stream, and the colors seem to be more vivid. Chen Ping'an's water is not as good as Liu Xianyang's, but it's not bad either. Chen Ping'an didn't expect that the strange girl would never have a rest when she finished eating, and then picked up another food from her side, and her cheeks would never stop puffing up. Chen Ping'an carried half a basket of heavy stones on his back, thinking, touching rocks after getting into the water is also physical work. So I turned sideways and took off the basket and put it on the ground. Chen Ping'an underestimated the hearing of the girl in Qing Yi, but as soon as she let it go, the girl suddenly pricked up her ears, and her eyes swept over instantly. Chen Ping'an couldn't say that girl. You just eat slowly. So she smiled awkwardly. The girl's expression was a little sluggish, and she burped twice in succession. And then she seemed to be choking, so she quickly straightened her chest and reached out to pat her chest hard. It was only then that Chen Ping'an realized that she was young, with her neck down. The scenery over there was truly spectacular, and she was not at all inferior to many women who had given birth to children. The shirt on the chest was too tight. Chen Ping'an quickly retracted his gaze, but he didn't have any evil thoughts. Only then did the girl in green clothes remember that she had brought a water bottle. She turned her back to Chen Ping'an, raised her head and took a gulp of water, and her breathing became smooth. The boy with straw sandals actually had only one simple thought at the time. The fabric of this girl's clothes must not be cheap, otherwise she would not be able to bear so much energy. The girl in Qing Yi continued to eat. This time, she was more reserved. At least her cheeks were not so exaggerated. She lowered her head and nibbled at small mouth. From time to time, she squinted at the strange town boy, with a pair of peach-like long and narrow eyes, the end of the eyes slightly upward, upturned. Let the girl be born like a young fox charm. She seems to be asking the boy with her eyes, what's the matter with you? Keep on your way. Chen Ping'an's face was helpless, so he could only stretch his finger to the stream outside the bluestone cliff, and shouted, I didn't pass by here. I want to go to the stream on your side. She looked at the thin young man, but didn't speak. Chen Ping'an quickly picked up a stone from the basket and continued to explain, I'm going to pick up these stones from the stream. The girl suddenly remembered the appearance of the important matter, and put her finger to her mouth, motioning Chen Ping'an not to speak. And then she moved her position, apparently to let Chen Ping'an go over. She would not prevent him from going into the water to pick up stones. Chen Ping'an had no choice but to carry the basket and walk over there. Fortunately, the bluestone cliff is very large and can stand more than 10 people, and the girl has already taken the initiative to sit on the edge. An open package was placed on her knees, piled up with all kinds of pastries and snack, like a hill. So far, only a small hill has been eaten by the girl. Chen Ping'an put down his straw sandals, baskets, and bamboo baskets. Originally, he was thinking about the midnight, so he went into the water with his shirtless. Now don't think about it. there is an unfamiliar yellow-flowered girl sitting next to her, not to mention whether she will scream or not. If this was seen or heard by her parents, Chen Ping'an would not be wronged if her legs were broken. Chen Ping'an came to the edge of the stone cliff, and a fierce boy rushed into the bottom of the puddle. Soon I felt a stone, the size of my palm. But unfortunately it was not a snake gallstone, so I had to wipe my face and continue diving. After 3 times, I finally felt a blue-black snake gallstone. Chen Ping'an climbed up the stone cliff wet and wet, put it in the basket, and then continued to plunge into the water. From start to finish, the girl turned her back to this side, busy eating. In less than half an hour, Chen Ping'an had already found 7 or 8 stones, except for the first one, which was dark in color. The rest of the stones were large and bright. The last time I plunged Mengzi down, I didn't take the stone ashore, but caught a live fish the length of my hand. The town is commonly known as slatefish. When I meet people, I like to hide under the stones. The meat is very delicious, slightly longer than a finger. There is rarely such a big slate fish in Chen Ping'an's hands. Chen Ping'an was actually stealing cracks in the bottom of the pit before, and he touched a few, but he let it go for the sake of the stone. The fish soup for Miss Ning is also quite good. After Chen Ping'an came ashore, he threw the fish into the bamboo basket. When he caught the fish for the second time and landed, Chen Ping'an suddenly found that the girl was squatting beside the fish basket. Looking at the fish basket with a solitary fish lying there, the ally saw that the stone was almost the same. Chen Ping'an threw the second slate fish into the bamboo basket. The girl slowly raised her head. The barefooted teenager had turned and walked quickly and got down the stream again. After listening to the boy's plop, the girl quickly grabbed a fish from the bamboo basket, looked down at them still jumping, looked serious, nodded and said, "Amazing." The girl in Qingyi knew that there were many strange sights in this small town. The well-named Xinghua Lane was hung with an iron lock of unknown length. The covered bridge not far away was actually a 3,000-year-old stone arch bridge across the creek. At the bottom of the bridge was a rusty iron sword. The tip of the sword pointed to a bottomless turquoise pool, the crab archway with 12 legs, the dilapidated statues in the grass outside the ancestral hall, and the porcelain mountain in the north, piled up with the porcelain that was judged as defective by the superintendent of the past dynasties, all of which were smashed. Wait, she even knew most of the reason. She followed her father all over the world when she was very young, so she deserved to have seen the big world. But when Chen Ping'an grabbed the slate fish for the 3rd time and landed, the girl with her hands empty still squatted beside the fish basket, but her hands were still wiping the corners of her clothes secretly. She looked up at the barefooted boy approaching, like the common people looked at the eyes of the gods. Chen Ping'an was confused by her strange eyes, and asked tentatively, "Do you want these fish?" The girl nodded subconsciously. Chen Ping'an smiled and said, "Then these 3 items are all for you. I'll catch them later." The girl blinked and smiled happily. Foxy and flirtatious, Chen Ping'an is very familiar with this kind of look, just like when he was a child. He looked at Liu Xianyang as the same. At that time, Liu Xianyang was the king of children in the area of Xinghua Lane and Nipping Lane, catching snakes and birds and fishing. There is nothing that Liu Xianyang can't do. Later, some of the peers who originally followed Liu Xianyang's buttocks as attendants, some also went to Longyao as apprentices, and more scattered into various grocery stores in the town to work as assistants, or help relatives to manage accounts, just like Song Jixian. It was said that the most unpromising person would go to the crops to shave and eat, and in the end, he was the only one left with Liu Xianyang. Chen Ping'an strung together the 3 slate fish given to the girl with a few dog's tail grasses through the fish's gills and handed them to the girl. She took the string of fish, carried it, and it was a little light. It didn't feel like she could fit a plate of fried fish with green peppers. She tilted her head and glanced at the puddle of the creek, full of anticipation. Chen Ping'an understood and said apologetically, "The fish I catch next, I want to make soup for my friend's body, so I can't give it to you." The girl pointed to the open package not far away, indicating that the pastries could be exchanged for fish. Chen Ping'an shook his head and smiled and said, "No, the pastries are delicious and can fill the stomach, but it is not as good as fish soup." The girl nodded, without any difficulty. She silently sat back to her original position, carefully placed the fish beside her feet, and continued her great cause of sit and eat. Although Chen Ping'an was curious about her identity, he didn't ask too much. Looking at her dress, she didn't look like a lady from Taoye Lane on Fulu Street, but she looked like Chigui from the next door neighbor. "I don't like to talk." Chen Ping'an was suddenly a little worried. She couldn't be a little girl who stole things from the house and came out to eat. "I heard that the rules in those mansions are very strong. Liu Xianyang and Song Jixian always like to talk in reverse. There are exceptions, but Liu Xianyang's statement is very scary, saying that the maids in those houses with high courtyard walls, if the walking posture is wrong, the housekeeper who is as good as the snake eagle will send someone to break his leg and lose it, to die in the street outside the wall." Song Jixian said that Liu Xianyang used falsehoods to spread falsehoods, which is not so exaggerated. But the maids in everyone's door really walked like a cat and could not hear the slightest sound. At that time, Liu Xianyang caught a glimpse of Jigui, the maid who was stealing the music, and immediately became angry. He cursed Song Jixian goose. "What kind of goose? Can your goose talk?" Chen Ping'an finally caught 7 or 8 slate fish, and the bamboo basket was swayed by them. The pale boy knew that he was almost at his limit. The cold water in spring is the kind that burrows into his bones. And the most important thing is, of course, his injured left hand, unable to stand it. After Chen Ping'an went ashore for the last time, he quickly jumped off the bluestone cliff, got into the grass by the stream, made a rustling sound, and soon pulled out 3 or 4 kinds of grass, many grass roots, holding the soil. Grasping it in the palm of my hand, I picked up an ordinary stone. After returning to the stone cliff, I found a small natural pothole the size of a palm on the stone cliff. After wiping it clean, I began to gently pound the herbs, turned into a cyan paste. The juice exudes the unique fragrance of spring waterside weeds. With his back to the girl, Chen Ping'an took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and began to disassemble the cotton cloth in his left hand. Sweat quickly seeped out of his forehead, covering the icy stream that fell from his hair. The bloody wound, although it was better than the bones before the bandage, was better, but it was still shocking. When Chen Ping'an came, he didn't expect to touch the stream with his left hand, so he didn't prepare a cotton cloth. Before, his mind was full of 2 things: snake gallstone can make money and catching fish to make soup. At this time, he realized that he had made a big mistake. The teenager was a little stunned when suddenly a palm appeared in front of him, with several dry and clean cloth strips spread out. It turned out that the girl in Qingyi tore off a sleeve at some point. After smearing herbal medicine on the wound on the palm of the hand, close to the mouth, bite one end with the teeth, pull the right hand tightly, and tie the knot around the back of the hand twice. After the binding was completed, Chen Ping'an slowly raised his right arm to wipe the sweat on his face. His arms trembled uncontrollably. The girl in Qingyi, who was squatting nearby, stretched out a thumb to Chen Ping'an. With the expression of "you being very powerful" on her face, Chen Ping'an pointed his right eye to his eye and smiled bitterly. Actually, the pain made me cry. The girl turned her head and glanced at the big basket and the green bamboo fish basket that the boy had woven. Feeling a little puzzled, Chen Ping'an looked embarrassed. Those stones can make money, and catching fish is also very important. The girl was ignorant, but she still did not speak. Her eyes were a little empty, and she turned her head to stare at the sparkling stream. The gurgling stream rubbed against the stones that came out of the water, making a rattling sound. At that moment, the starry sky was bright, the world was lonely, and there seemed to be only a pair of young girls in the world. Chen Ping'an's body gradually calmed down, and the previously rapid breathing began to subconsciously slow down and turned into a long, continuous breath. It's like a stream from a flash flood to a stream with dry water in spring and autumn. This kind of quiet change, the young man didn't care about it at all. It was natural, and it happened naturally. Chen Ping'an knew that he was wet and could not be blown by the cold wind of early spring for too long, so he had to go back to the town to change his clothes quickly. Teenagers naturally do not understand the health preservation and pathology in medical books. But the teenagers who are most afraid of getting sick in this life have long developed a keen intuition about the changes of the 4 seasons and the adaptation of their own body. So he quickly put on straw sandals, tied a fish basket around his waist, carried the basket on his back, waved to the girl in Qingyi, and said with a smile, "I'm leaving. Girl, you also go home earlier." While walking down the stone cliff, Chen Ping'an couldn't help turning his head and reminded, "The water over the covered bridge is very deep. Be careful not to slip your feet. When you go home, it is best to lean on the side of the paddy field. Even if falling down, it's better to be covered in mud than to fall into the stream." As Chen Ping'an was talking, he suddenly realized that what he said was a bit unlucky. It didn't sound like a good word. Instead, it was Gu Chan's mother-in-law in the mud bottle alley. "Shut your mouth. Stop nagging. Quicken your pace, and run north to the town. The basket is very heavy," but the straw shoe boy was very happy. After unraveling the nearly dead knot, for the first time, Chen Ping'an felt that he had to live well. Well, like having money. If you can afford Spring Festival couplets with a unique ink fragrance, painted door gods, and eat meat buns from Aunt Mao's shop, it's best to buy another cow. And like Song Jiksen next door, you can raise a nest of chickens. The girl in Qingyi is still digging mountains tirelessly. With a serious expression, every time she picks up a new cake, she seems to be dealing with a life and death enemy. When she was competing with a piece of peach blossom cake, her body suddenly stiffened. When she realized that something was wrong, instead of running away, she opened her mouth wide, swallowed half of the cake whole, clapped her hands, and sat on the spot waiting to die. I don't know when there will be another man. He is not tall, but it gives a solid feeling. But it will not make people mistaken for a villager and peasant, because the eyes of the man are too dazzling. People dare not face it. The man looked at the broken patterned package with only the foot of the mountain left. His face was helpless. He wanted to speak a lesson, but he was reluctant, silently watching his daughter's stubborn appearance, that if I made a mistake, I would admit the punishment. He was even more distressed, as if he was the one who made the mistake. Men want to say something to ease the atmosphere. For example, if your daughter is hungry, you can eat at the sword stove thatched hut. After eating, Dad will buy it for you in the town tomorrow. But when the words came to his mouth, the introverted man couldn't say it again, as if every word was crucial. He pressed his tongue tightly, and he didn't know how to comfort his daughter. At this moment, the man felt that he was not as capable as that straw shoe boy, so his daughter didn't need to be so nervous. The girl in Qingyi suddenly raised her head and asked, "Father, why didn't you accept him as an apprentice?" The girl took the initiative to speak, so that the man was relieved Although the man had a stern face, he was already sitting beside his daughter and explained, "That baby has a good temperament, but his roots are too bad. Even if his father accepts him, he will be pulled by his brothers and sisters all at once. Keep a distance. No matter how hard you try, you can only watch the gap grow bigger. If there is another senior brother Liu, why bother?" The girl in Qingyi's face was gloomy. I don't know if it was because of hearing that senior brother Liu or because of the youth with straw sandals passing by him. The man hesitated for a moment, but still didn't plan to hide it, lest she go astray or ruin the saint's plan. Furthermore, this young man is too ordinary, but in a small town, he seems very special. Shuir. You probably don't, I know. This baby's natal porcelain was smashed a long time ago, so it became a ghost, like a ghost, not under the shadow of the ancestors. And at the same time, there will be all kinds of strange things that are not easy to detect, which is also the reason why Song Jiksen and the woman chose to be his neighbors, or else, as Song Jiksen, would not even be able to live on Fulu streets. Obviously impossible. The girl thought for a while. "Dad, do you mean he's a bit like a bait?" The man touched her head, almost. Then he said with a smile, "If we, father and daughter, are not the sword cultivators who don't pay much attention to foreign objects, chance and strength, maybe father will let him stay by his side to see if it can benefit you more." Qingyi, the girl was a little bored and in a bad mood. The man said with emotion, "Shuer, father's words are not rough. Don't think it sounds bad?" The girl in Qingyi still looked ill, unable to lift her spirits. The man thought for a while, and pointed to the covered bridge above the Black Dragon Hengshi in the distance. The construction of that covered bridge was a big effort of the Dali dynasty, just to suppress that humble iron sword. Just imagine, for a moment, after 3,000 years, a sword without a master whose original spirit is broken and exhausted. After more than years, in order to suppress its remaining power, a dynasty still needs to pay such a huge price. What I want is still to let it rest for a while. The girl snorted, drooping her head, staring at the foot of the mountain out of the corner of her eyes, and absent-mindedly echoed, "It's amazing." The man didn't know whether to laugh or cry, rubbing his forehead. The world is big, and the food is the biggest, but the child's mother is not such a woman. So whose temperament is this girl? The man patted his daughter's shoulder and said softly, "Dad, go see someone. Be yourself. Eat slowly. No one will rob you." The girl suddenly raised her head and grabbed the man's arm. A crimson bracelet on her wrist was shining brightly, showing the shape of a dragon with its head and tail connected. Like a lively flame of a small flood dragon wrapped around the girl's wrist, the man said with relief, "I finally have some conscience. Okay, don't worry. Dad is going to see Mr. Qi." The girl released her hand, immediately grabbed the cake, and devoured it. The masculinity didn't show up, and he endured all the hardships until now, and finally couldn't help muttering, "Eat, eat." The bastard surnamed Liu deserves to be beaten, but he really didn't say anything wrong. Sooner or later he will eat it. Become a chubby fat girl. Who would dare to marry you as a daughter-in-law at that time? Could it be that Dad still wants to snatch a son-in-law? The girl stopped to eat, holding the cake in both hands. She was about to cry. The man ran away, and he did not forget to slap himself with his back to his daughter. This is the case every time, and it falls short. In the middle of the night, Chen Ping'an ran all the way back to Liu Xianyang's house, and when he unlocked the lock, he could hear the guy's thunderous snoring. The heart is so big. If it was Chen Ping'an's words, he would definitely not sleep well tonight. First put the baskets and fish baskets in the kitchen built in the courtyard, and then went to the side room on the right that Liu Xianyang had vacated for him. Fish. Dissect the belly. Wash it, put it in a clean porcelain plate, and cover it with another plate to avoid attracting snakes, rats, and insects. Chen Ping'an picked out 5 or 6 most eye-catching snake gallstones from the basket and moved them to the side room where he slept. I took a look at the longsword Ning had placed on the cabinet before, and it was still lying there quietly. After doing all this, Chen Ping'an was finally able to lie down in the bed. His body gradually warmed up, but the boy's eyes lit up. On the one hand, the left hand is tingling, and on the other hand, there is no sleepiness. But the real reason is that Chen Ping'an knows more about the unreasonableness of those outsiders than Liu Xianyang. The young man did not dare to fall asleep, so Chen Ping'an didn't sleep all night, always paying attention to the movement of the courtyard gate and the house gate. At dawn, Chen Ping'an got up and went to the kitchen, picked up the burden, and was going to pick up 2 buckets of water from the iron lock well in Xinghua Lane. The sleepy-eyed Liu Xianyang hid under the duvet with only one head exposed. Hearing a slight noise, he shouted in a daze, "Chen Ping'an, are you up so early? What are you doing?" Chen Ping'an said angrily. "Carry the water." Liu Xianyang shouted again, "If you meet Jiggy, say hello for me." Chen Ping'an was too lazy to pay attention to this guy. Just as he was about to walk out of the courtyard, Chen Ping'an suddenly heard Liu Xianyang say, "Chen Ping'an, as long as you are willing to help, I will help you go to the puddle and touch for rocks when you turn around." Chen Ping'an smiled brightly. "Good." Liu Xianyang rolled his eyes, even retracted his head into the quilt, and muttered, "You ungrateful guy. You just know that this trick will work." On the stone steps of the covered bridge, there was a middle-aged scholar sitting alone, and he sat till dawn. The first ray of dawn appeared in Kaiqing by that day. He looked up and laughed softly. 1,000-year-old dark room. A light is bright, When Chen Ping'an carried a bucket to the Iron Lock Well, he passed several breakfast shops in Xinghua Lane in the middle. He got hungry without saying hello, but he was shy, and the teenager could only bite the bullet and queue up to fetch water. There were 3 other families in front of him, and when it was his turn, Jigui suddenly shoved a small bucket in his hand, and the people behind him immediately became unhappy, although not scolding. But the words are not pleasant. Especially there is a rickety old woman known as Granny Ma. The 2 sons are very promising, and each has a dragon kiln, but Xinghua Lane is naturally a wealthy family. But for some reason, the relationship between the old woman and her 2 daughters-in-law is not good. The son and daughter-in-law have already moved to Taoyuan Lane, and the old woman has been living alone. The ancestral home in Xinghua Lane, in the eyes of Chen Ping'an and Liu Yangshan's generation, Granny Ma has always been a very scary elder. She curses people very hard, especially stingy. In winter, she can't wait to see the snow outside the courtyard. At home, if a child uses the snow in front of her house for a snowball fight, or pulls out the ice all under her eaves, she can carry a broom and chase and beat and scold for a few streets without getting tired. In the past, in the alleys in the west of the town, only Gu Khan's mother could hold back Granny Ma's arrogance. Now Widow Gu is said to have gone to her husband's hometown with the distant relatives of her dead man. The mother-in-law, Ma, who had been a little kind-hearted over the years, immediately returned to the rivers and lakes, and she was not pleasing to the eyes of anyone who caught her. As soon as Song Jixin's maid came out like this, Granny Ma immediately began to speak yin and yang strangely, with a low voice and no smile. Anyway, when I walk, I can't keep my legs together anymore. This is a great joy. Finally, I don't need to be a maid, and I can be called Mrs. Chen Ping'an's scalp felt numb when he heard it, but it was not easy to drive away Jiggy, who had made a mistake first. After all, he had been a neighbor for so many years. After helping Liu Xianyang fill up 2 buckets of water, he quickly brought up a bucket of water for her. Thinking of leaving this talkative mother-in-law early, Granny Ma was even more annoyed when she saw that the little servant of the Song family pretended not to hear. This is the case with masters. The most fearful is that the opponent will not accept the move at all. If you have a good martial arts, you will have nowhere to stay. In the past, the old woman quarreled with Widow Gu, the sassy fox, and she lost. After each incident, the old woman felt that her skills were good, and the next time she quarreled, she would definitely be able to regain her place. It was like this little hoof in Mud Bottle Alley, who deliberately kept silent every time. But every time, the look in the eyes of the second girl when she left also showed that the old woman was extremely uncomfortable. It really made the old woman hate it, and she really wanted to go forward and grab her face so as to save the teenagers and young men in the nearby alleys. Everyone can't wait to hang their souls on the waist of the shameless servant girl, especially his grandson. Although he has always been a fool in the eyes of outsiders, but recently, even her grandmother felt that this child was really out of her mind. The maid of Pingsheng married back home as a daughter-in-law, and then punched this god into a hole, seeing that the hateful girl didn't respond. Granny Ma slapped her ID on the poor boy. The unpromising bastard has killed his parents and has the face to live in the world, knowing that he is destined to be incapable of marrying a daughter-in-law. So she just licking their faces and hooking up with other people's mates. It's really a pair of dogs and men made in heaven. They should be together. Anyway, Mud Bottle Alley is a place where trash and cheap people live. The children born in the future can't really be king in Mud Bottle Alley. Domination. Chen Ping'an thought for a while, then bent down just to let go of the burden on his shoulders. The maid, Jigui, had put down the bucket early and strode towards the fearless old woman. The girl slapped her without saying a word, causing Granny Ma to turn around in a circle. Dizzy. Fall. Jigui didn't wait for the old woman to recover, but took another step forward, slapped her face and fell, and the girl scolded. I have endured you for a long time. The old woman shook her head and was so angry that she was about to fight back. Wonder if it was an illusion? The support of the 2 women around her was too hard to break free for a while. As a result, she was humiliated for the 3rd time. He bent his fingers and tapped the old woman's forehead to death. If you dare to curse again in the future, I will pull out the tongue of your long-tongued woman. If you swear a word, I will stab you once with a needle. The old woman was so frightened that she forgot to fight back, let alone fight back. The girl turned around and walked away quickly, and found that the neighbor boy had helped her carry the bucket, smiled, and returned to Mud Bottle Alley with him. Before Chen Ping'an could speak, the girl died. Don't thank me. It's nothing to do with you if I swear. Chen Ping'an was speechless. The empty-handed girl muttered to herself, over there. Anyway, she never thought of taking the bucket back from the straw shoe boy. Next to the iron-locked well wheel cart, the old woman was sitting on the ground and wailing. The little maid who has suffered thousands of knives will be punished by God? My life is so hard. God doesn't have long eyes. Why don't you strike a thunderbolt and smash this guy to death? Xiao Long's hoof. The girl's footsteps were brisk. Her hands were propped up to the sky one by one, a very strange gesture. Fortunately, Chen Ping'an has been her neighbor for so many years, so it doesn't seem strange. When the 2 passed the early shop, Chen Ping'an saw a familiar figure. She was not tall and was wearing blue clothes. She was buying freshly baked meat buns. Chen Ping'an. This morning, I don't know when the clouds are low, and it is extra thick, like a big quilt of a rich family, spread over there to bask in the sun. Rumbling. Thunder shook the town overhead. Ma Liu, who was at the iron lock well, stood up and ran home in a hurry. The small bucket was swaying, and the well water was spilled all the way. It is estimated that there will not be half a bucket of water left. The old woman probably knew that if God really opened his eyes, the first lightning strike would most likely fall on her head. After Chen Ping'an heard the thunder, he raised his head and looked up. A little puzzled, it didn't look like it was a sign of rain. The girl smiled and said, "My young master said that he has read it in the book. It is rumored that in the early spring, there will be a righteous God in heaven wearing a golden armor, beating drums in the sky, saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new, shocking all evil. To announce the new year." Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "Your young master does read a lot." The girl sighed. "My young master is good at everything, but he is lazy, and he likes to scold God. I don't think it's good." Chen Ping'an didn't have the habit of telling people right and wrong behind his back, so he didn't say anything about it. Next door, Song Jiksen has a strange temper that has persisted for many years. However, scholars also have the attention of scholars. When there are snowy nights, thunderstorms, and the sky is covered with colorful clouds, this is Song Jiksen's 3-no scolding, saying that he is going to scold him while God is taking a nap, and God will not listen. When he arrives, he will not be angry. And Song Jiksen can also relieve his anger and comfort, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Seeing that Chen Ping'an was not talking, Jigui said casually, "You didn't go home last night. Went to Liu Xianyang's place." Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "It's inconvenient to have guests at home." She asked suddenly, "By the way, did Mr. Qi meet you, and what did he say?" Chen Ping'an asked back, "Why do you ask that?" She smiled innocently and said, "Just ask, because when I went out to fetch water today, I happened to meet Mr. Qi, who said it was an early morning walk, and asked me if you were at home. So I answered truthfully." Chen Ping'an smiled and said, "I met Mr. Qi by accident before, and he told me a few common words, roughly saying that I should go to school with Liu Xianyang to study. I can only say that my family is poor. If not, I would also like to study." Jigui asked suspiciously, "Is that so?" Chen Ping'an looked at her eyes and asked with a smile, "How else do you think?" She laughed it off. The two separated at the corner. Jigui took the bucket and went to Mud Pingxiang. Chen Ping'an returned to Liu Xianyang's house, and after that, he had to go to the east gate of the city to pick up a letter, a penny, if he owned this business early. Based on Chen Ping'an's foot strength to travel all over the hills of 100 Mile, it is estimated that his wife has already saved enough. At the mouth of the clay bottle alley, Jigui saw his young master standing there, yawning. She walked quickly and asked curiously, "Master, why did you come out?" Song Jiksen slowly stretched his body and said lazily, "It's boring to stay." She asked in a low voice, "Sir, when will the new inspector return to the town? Can we go to the capital after that?" Song Jiksen thought for a while. "It's just a matter of 10 days. Jigui hesitated, and the small bucket in his hand also swayed. Song Jiksen smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Have something on your mind?" She timidly said, "Young master, can you lend me the local county gazetteer? In just a night or two, I am good at recognizing characters, and I can save the capital, which will be looked down upon by others. And I will implicate the young master in making jokes." Song Jiksen laughed dumbly, and after thinking for a while, "What's the embarrassment to say? But remember to wash your hands before turning over the book. Don't get dirt on the pages, and be careful of candle oil dripping on it. There is no need for anything else. Note, it's just a broken book so far." Jigui smiled brightly. "My servant thanked the sun." Song Jiksen was delighted and laughed heartily. "Come here. My son will help you lift the water." Jigui dodged for a moment and said sternly, "Young master, didn't you agree that the gentleman will cook far away? How can the son touch these chores? If it spreads out, I will be stabbed in the spine by the neighbors." Songji said with a smile, "Rules, reason, etiquette, and these things, you can fool and scare others. My son, having said that, the seed of reading who grew up in a mean alley will not go on." She asked curiously, "What is the son?" Song Jiksen resumed his cynical smile and pointed at himself. "My son, I am actually a peasant. I divide a field into ridges and ridges, line by line, and then let people sow seeds and divert water to irrigate. I just sit and wait for the harvest. Year after year, that's all." She was dazed. Song Jiksen laughed. The young man suddenly restrained his smile and said solemnly, "Jigui, did the surname Chen carry the bucket for you all the way?" The maid nodded, her eyes innocent. The young man said earnestly, "There is a sage who had once said that he is willing to regard a little kindness of strangers as a rare treasure, but treat all the sacrifices of those close to him as a matter of course, and turn a blind eye to them, which is wrong." The maid was even more confused and puzzled. "Huh." The young man rubbed his chin and said to himself, "I didn't hear what I said. So how can I answer the question? Master, could it be that when I arrive in the capital, I want to change to a smarter, more understanding and beautiful Shuiling Xiao maid?" The maid couldn't help laughing out loud. She didn't take the threat of her young master to heart at all, and revealed the truth. "Young master actually wants to wait for me to ask, who is this sage asked by the university?" "Young master? I know. It's you." "Well," Song Jiksen laughed heartily. "Those who know me." Jigui. Inside the schoolroom, a middle-aged scholar sat upright. and all the black and white pieces on the chessboard in front of him turned into powder and the sound of spring thunder. There is a way for young children in small towns to catch slatefish in the creek. It is to hit the rocks in the creek with a hammer, and the fish hiding at the bottom of the rocks will be stunned and surfaced. It is similar to the so-called knocking the mountain and shaking the tiger in the book. But if you want to warn a sage, don't act against the sky. It goes against the Tao of reason. Then the heavy weapon that matches its identity between heaven and earth is probably only the mighty Tianlei.